Everybody, good evening. Welcome to the Ben and Jay Show. Tonight, we gather in the wake of recent events. Our topic of autism and police interaction has been in the works for some time now. In the midst of our pandemic, climatically a disease known as racism has become more apparent in our communities and the world. Not veering off of our topic for this evening, but we feel that addressing the so-called elephant in the room head on first will not only give respect to those lost or affected every day by racism, but also will allow us to speak freely about both topics with the focus to take action. So this panel is made possible by Access Services. Access Service is a nonprofit, serving 11 counties in Eastern Pennsylvania with the mission to create better ways to serve people with special needs. They've been doing it for 44 years and only expanding their services as they bend to fit the needs of those in Eastern Pennsylvania. So myself and Ben would like to thank everybody that is here on the panel tonight, as well as the participants that are viewing. Don't forget, we would like to hear from you, the public. We are going to have as many segments as possible when it comes to tonight's panel. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our panel tonight. So in no particular order, we have Her Honor, Judge Andrea Duffy. Thank you for joining us tonight. Is Chief Scott Benning, is he available? Okay, we're still waiting for him to join. The next panelist we have is Thomas Iland. He is an author, speaker, and autism advocate. We have Max Woessner and Matthew Walsh. They are peer mentors to individuals on the spectrum. Chante Douglas, who is just one of our guests. She is an author and mother to a child with autism. Kathleen Sammer, behavioral analyst at Access Services. Mark Borse, outreach worker for Access Services Homeless Outreach Program. We also have Alyssa.
Hey, Ben.
Alyssa is also here as well. So we have a full panel. We're waiting for a couple other people that might have some technical.
Ben, I'm here.
Okay. We got Will on.
Hey, Will.
So we got a lot of people on here. We want to definitely get started. Ben and myself normally like to introduce ourselves and our stories, but we feel like tonight we need to refrain from this as to respect the time and the matter at hand. Ben, you got the floor.
Yes, sir. We have some clips from YouTube that we would like to share with you. These may be graphics and deserving to some, but what is needed now is conversations and listening.
We are not the problem. We are not the problem. And I'm going to tell you something that a lot of people won't like. The police are not the problem. The police are not the problem. I don't care what you think. I don't care how angry you are. They are working under a system. The problem is the system. Yes, sir! Shut it down! Shut it down! Hands up! Hands up! Stop killing black people!
Since you're a Philly girl, and I'm an adopted Philly girl, I wanted to also show the video of the Frank Rizzo statue being taken down by the city of Philadelphia from where it has stood since 1999 in front of City Hall. The mayor who divided the city in the 60s and 70s, first as a get tough police chief, then a law and order Democratic mayor who was well known for for the many charges that were established of police brutality against the Black Panthers and other minority groups. Kristen?
And of course, Andrea, you covered Frank Rizzo when you were a reporter in Philadelphia, and some of his policies, which have widely regarded at the time and now through an historic lens as being racially divisive. And so it is remarkable that his statue was brought down, although, of course, there's bipartisan agreement that the looting and the violence has to stop, and that it's these types of peaceful protests that ultimately will get that message across that is so critical.
Next tonight, growing outrage after a 10-year-old boy with autism was handcuffed in his own school. Police say the boy had been misbehaving and may have posed a threat. But did police go too far? Here's ABC's Ariel Reshef.
Tonight, 2 Texas parents outraged, sharing this school resource officer's body camera video showing their son with autism handcuffed at school.
It's totally excessive.
Do you want help?
Police and teachers say back in April, 10-year-old Thomas Brown was poking other students and refusing to listen. The officer and another staff member appear to pick him up and carry him out of the classroom. The child seen screaming as the officer forces him to the ground.
Do you want the handcuffs?
Eventually putting him in handcuffs several times. Once the boy relaxes, the restraints are removed. The staff claiming for much of the time inside that room, they sat quietly with Thomas, trying to settle him. Tonight, the city of Denton standing behind the officer, saying in a statement the decision to use restraints was made only when the child posed a serious threat to himself or others. And the school district telling ABC News, we have protocol in place to ensure the safety of all of our students. We will continue to review our practices and work with our partner law enforcement agencies. But Thomas's parents say plans they discussed with the school were not followed.
It doesn't make sense that somebody that is supposed to protect our children are hurting them.
A 9-year-old kid sobs as he is placed in handcuffs at his elementary school. Cops were called after 4th grader Devin Shepard got into a fight with a classmate during recess. When a teacher intervened, Devin hit the teacher.
Anything in your pockets or anything, buddy? You need mom and dad? No?
The boy's father is recording the heartbreaking scene. The footage is a little shaky because he's trembling with anger.
Devin, just chill out, buddy. You're leaving with me. Promise you.
Any questions or anything, guys?
Nope.
Okay. You want my name? You're recording my name?
I'm recording you. I'm worried about my attorney be contacting you.
Right on.
I'll get the report tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Love you, buddy. I'll be right there.
Little Devin can't stop crying as he's led out of Needham Elementary School in Franklin, Indiana. Today, Devin's parents, Ronnie and Melissa Shepard, are speaking out.
That video, very hard to watch, very difficult to hear your son crying.
It was very disturbing. I knew I kept my cool because I was out of school.
Devin says the fight on the school playground was triggered after his classmates started bullying him. Devin, who is autistic, was charged with battery and criminal mischief. The local police department says in a statement, officers involved followed both department and juvenile arrest protocol. But Devin's family says they went too far.
Any questions or anything, guys?
This is the first time Officer Tim Purdy and 18-year-old Jeremiah Glover have seen one another since that dangerous day.
Long time no see. Yeah. You been doing all right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And this is the first time Jeremiah's mom has seen the now famous photo.
Wow.
And this is what happened.
This is 911.
May 12th, North Carolina, Charlotte. Jeremiah's mother calls 911 to report her autistic son missing. He's got a history of violence, maybe suicidal.
We were doing good, and I don't know what happened today.
Purdy, a 22-year police veteran's just starting his day. On the radio, he already hears 2 fellow officers have found Jeremiah, but he reads something else in their voices.
You know what? Let me just kind of head that way and see if I might be able to help out a little bit.
Driving up, he sees the officers physically struggling to restrain the teen.
I pulled right here.
And senses it's about to go very bad. His next move is remarkable.
So as I approached him, I just kind of got down on my knees, you know, and tried to get to his level.
What did you talk about after that?
Football, the Panthers.
The explosive situation turned into a conversation. A fellow officer was so moved by the scene, he took a photo. It went viral.
So tell me this, was the getting down on his level training or something you have just learned?
Just something that I've learned over the years.
So these are the reasons why we do shows like this and why it needs to be talked about. And let me express and emphasize when I'm talking about these. I'm not talking about that individual, because I go by a systematic approach. That God created everyone in his image, that everybody has his heart, his love within them. It's just that because of different things in this world that has calloused that individual's heart, it makes him want to approach what's going on in the world on a different level. And that's what how we actually do that is we actually show love. So regardless of what this individual may have been going through in life, I just want him to know that God loves him. And regardless of what he may feel towards me, towards anybody that's of any different color here on this panel today, I want you to know that God loves them and we're all children of God. So that callousness that's in your heart is going to be removed soon, whoever you are, all right? I love you and I hope you find direction in life that will give you peace no matter what. But let's continue on with the show. We could have shown what many of you have already seen, the looting, destruction of property and places. But adding that to this platform would not push us forward in our answers, but propel us backwards in what we are trying to accomplish here. And that's listening. All right. So Ben, you're going to start off the conversation with your question, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, here we go. I would like to start tonight's discussion with my question. I am a white male who is on the spectrum. I strive every day to wake up and make differences in this world through my smile, my words, and my heart. No matter what color a person is, I have friends in all different races. Why has it took so long for my race to just listen?
And this is a question that's open to anybody, so anybody can go ahead and chime in on that.
I would love to start, Ben, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So I think that a lot of it has to do with people not being sure how to approach this topic and being careful, but sometimes so careful that they avoid it altogether. And I think right now it's finally in a space where we can't avoid it anymore. And so people are finding a little bit of bravery inside where maybe before they were afraid to let that out, and they're finally having the conversations that we should have been having all along.
I think also we have a fear of people who are different, and that's why this topic I think is so relatable to those on the spectrum. We don't know how to deal with people who are different, and unfortunately through time we've learned to do the wrong thing, and not understand and not listen. And that's why it's so important, whether it's autism, whether it's race, whether it's religion, ethnicity, your sexual preferences and identities. We have to embrace difference. We don't have to question it. We don't have to make it seem strange. We are all different. And I know as a judge, every day I see very different people. There is no day that's boring. There is no day that's similar to the one before. So we have to understand that we're all different, and we need to embrace that and cherish it instead of questioning it and wondering and having fear about those who are different.
I wanted to interject what Your Honor said. I agree with what she was saying, is that each individual person is different. No two people are the same. And I think that that's a very common misconception that people have for those on the autism spectrum like myself. I think that when people are, I think the way that things are now, I think in light of everything that's going on, is that there's been a period of enlightenment. I think that people are starting to recognize that the system has not been fair to every individual. I think that a lot of the times people tend to view stuff as just a one-size-fits-all approach, but you have to recognize there has to be consistency, but at the same time, you can't approach two cases alike. You have to be able to look at it from all angles and then make the final determination. Is the final determination always the correct one? No. But I think that in light of what happened in Minneapolis, because of the fact that the incident was recorded, that without that evidence, people's perceptions might still be more divided. I think eventually, once all the dust settles, you're going to start seeing people a little more united. And I think that that is such a very, very great thing.
Can I piggyback on what Matthew said to answer Ben's question? There's so many layers to that question. Like, there's no like straightforward answer. Because I've had a few of my my white friends reach out to me over the last, I want to say, couple weeks of whatever, you know, with everything that's been going on, and really I just had to speak from the heart. And I think, like, you know, and some of my friends, we go back 20 years as far as our friendship. We're basically family. And I said, listen, if you love me and you love my son, you gotta be enraged about what's going on in the world. Like, it goes hand in hand. You can't, you know, embrace me, embrace my son and my family and not see what's going on. It's really just about you know, opening your eyes and listening. First off, not being like defensive, like when, you know, you're reaching out to your African-American friends and they're trying to explain like the pain that they're feeling and the trauma that they're experiencing. It's just all about listening, educating yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that people just don't want to listen, honestly.
And I think it also boils down to a question, or the concept rather, of nature versus nurture. Like, it's in our nature to at first fear what we don't understand, but how we respond to that fear, or who we surround ourselves with, or the environment we are raised in, or where we get our information, can play a big part in the response and the outcome to that situation. So as we think about what our parents believe and those beliefs being passed on to us, the religion that you might be practicing, or the company that you keep. When was the last time you asked yourself, why do I believe what I believe? And is this what I really think? Because we tend to be very heavily influenced by the people and the information around us. It's time for us to start asking and answering the difficult questions. And even sometimes the most basic questions can be the most difficult to answer, but that does not mean we should not ask them.
Exactly.
Great. I think it's also important not to pretend that you understand what someone else is going through, because you cannot put yourself in anyone else's shoes. Let's be honest. You have to know yourself, and you have to realize that you are not them. So don't try to reach out to them and say, oh, I get what you're going through. No, you don't. You absolutely don't.
Not to mention that society tends to have a hard time accepting and embrace and really welcoming change. It's not to say change does not happen, but it is to say throughout, you know, the lifetime of us, the lifetime of people older than us, is just to say it has taken some time for certain historical milestones to be why they are historical milestones in the first place. It remains to be seen what milestones will come out of everything that's happening now. Given the best indicator of the future is the past, and many historical milestones have come out of challenging times before. Yeah, you know the rest of that sentence.
Yeah.
Good conversation. Good points. We got the beautiful kids playing in the background. That's what we need. We need to love. Let's go on to the second question, Ben.
Jamiel, I just wanted to give you I just want to say thank you for doing that. You spoke out for all of us earlier, and I just want to give you a big round of applause for that. That was really, 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 really amazing.
Listen, a lot of people don't know who's watching here and watching on the Ausome show is that Ben is my brother. Ben is a Caucasian male, and I'm an African American male, but that doesn't make me any less connected to him. and we connect on a way that's different than anything on this world, and that's simply with our hearts. So that's something that you can't overpower with hate. No way, no how.
No.
So I just want everybody to know that this bond that we have, me and Ben, is going to be into my last breath. So it's very important that you see things like me and Ben interact, and everybody sees that, because we do need more of that in the world. Not saying that it's not present, but we need to see more of that. The second question I have, had to really think about it, as me being ex-law enforcement, currently looking to get back in law enforcement and as a first responder. I had to dig deep with this one. So this is another question that will be open to everyone on the panel. You could go ahead and speak out. So I basically started off, as an African-American man, I have been in positions where I've experienced police brutality in the past. The rage of inequality exploded inside of me as the years went by, feeling as if no one will ever listen, yet alone change it.
Excuse me.
I was blessed to have my son, which changed my perspective on how to handle this inequality. But with this change in perspective came an insecurity of my son being a target then, now, and in the future as he grows up. To my law enforcement panelists and everyone here, do you think the justice system is flawed? That's my first question. And the second thing, and if those officers and officials are respectfully sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States, why have we ignored, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, to ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America? If you don't know where that's from, that
Schoolhouse
is
Rock.
from our Constitution.
Schoolhouse Rock.
So, anybody would like to go in on that question?
I'll break the ice on this one. So I think people start, and this goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, people start with good intentions, like they want to uphold the law, they want to make a difference, they have good intentions. As the job, the situation, or whatever may come about unfolds, they maybe start to question themselves a little bit, or peer pressure starts to kick in. For instance, somebody getting hurt or on the receiving end of a beating because that person was bullied, or peer pressure, like, hey, beat this guy up, like it's fun. Or if that person didn't do what his or her peers suggested, then they would look like an outcast. So I think when we fear being not liked more than our fear of if we don't do our duty, that's when the system starts to collapse and fall apart at the seams.
I like what Tom had to add to the discussion, because I think that's what a lot of people, the emotions that they feel when they're coming out of the police academy and they're being sworn into the graduate from the police academy and become officers. At first, like, they're very much about wanting to uphold the law and everything, and then once they are groomed into the system, I think that sometimes they're put in a very vulnerable situation, and sometimes they want to make the right thing, but they fear if they think about it too much, then ultimately it will have some costly consequences. So sometimes I think that officers, their intentions may be good, but sometimes they just get caught up in the moment and don't always make the most logical choice. So it's like a knee-jerk reaction in a way. Obviously, like, if I were a police officer and I was in a life or death situation, my head would explode. I wouldn't know how to respond appropriately, because especially like when I was younger, people thought that I was impulsive, but in reality, when I took a look back on my days when I was younger and look back on it now, I actually tend to think that I was thinking too much, and then or that I was just letting things just snowball, and then I would react, and it wouldn't always be the most appropriate reaction. So I think that's the why sometimes the system is the way that it is. Sometimes it is because of a I don't want to say like a prejudice in a way, but sometimes sometimes I do think it's just people letting their biases get in the way, but other times it's just they get caught up in the moment and they act impulsively.
All right, so I'm going to interject. I want to interject real quick with this, and I want to ask Your Honor, if the Honorable Judge Duffy, if you would comment a little bit on this. But I just want to give a little bit of information. Matthew, you made a very, very good point. Also, Tom, you did too. I remember when I was a corrections officer, I'm not going to say the state. I was very much energetic. I was happy. I was just proud to actually be able to finally be in law enforcement and to be able to serve my country, my community, whether it be local, whether it be another state. I was excited. Unfortunately, when I was in that prison, the things that I was exposed to allowed me to notice that the system is very flawed. And what I say by that is that there is no room for compassion or humanity. And I can only speak from the prison system in that format. If we are here to reform individuals back into society as we want them to actually be, how can we not give them that portion of our heart? How can we not be able to love on someone with strict regulation and rules and regulations? But how can we not be able to do that? One instance, and I'm gonna make room for everybody else, is that I remember one summer evening I was working on one of the units there, no air conditioning. Okay, it's prison. It happens. It was inside of the building, literally 110 degrees. All of these cells had no windows that could actually open. Oh my gosh. I was extremely hot, about to pass out, extremely thirsty. I called my supervisor, my commanding officer, and said, "Captain, I apologize, but I will not let these individuals sweat to death or possibly pass out in their cells. I am going to, what we call, crack the door and allow at least some bit of air to circulate in there. And I will make this known on the tier." And I got up and I made it known on the tier that I'm going to crack the doors and no one is to exit out their room or I will shut every last door. And it worked. A little bit of my heart that I gave to these individuals, which some people might say, hey, they don't deserve it. I gave it to them and it worked. Why we cannot do this in the entire justice system? Or are we? And if so, why are we not seeing this enough?
Hey, Jay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm a police officer. I didn't see any other police officers jumping in, so I threw my video back on.
Okay. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Thank you so much for coming.
So
thanks for keeping us safe.
I also work for MCES with Michelle Monzo. I'm going to say right now that I don't know of one officer that I work with right now that's racially biased. And there's bad apples in every bunch. There's bad teachers that do bad things to young children and they shouldn't. There's bad priests, there's bad clergy, there's bad everything. Right now, the police are on the focus. What happened to George was bad. There's no way around it, and there's nothing that I can say to make it okay, and to make anybody feel okay about it. I grew up in Philadelphia. I went to school in the middle of North Philly. I was one of 5 white students. I was the minority there. I know how it feels to be a minority. If you go to my Facebook page, you'll see that 75% of my friends are Black. I have Black relatives. there is no difference. All I can say is if you feel like you're not seeing the empathy and the compassion in law enforcement, you really have to open your eyes, because that doesn't sell news stories. It rarely does. I tell people the story all the time. So my best friend, Blair, he's black, and his wife's white, and his daughter looks exactly like Doc McStuffins. I tell them all the time they need to go to Disney because they need to sue them because they stole her face. She's so adorable. She's also one of my daughter's best friends. And in kindergarten, she came to me and she said, and I remember it actually chokes me up every time, because she said, "Dad, Emma is brown." And I said, okay. She doesn't know what black is. She doesn't know what white is. She doesn't know what African American is. She doesn't know what Caucasian is. And that's how we raise her, because that's the way we believe everyone should be. So I let her go on with her story, and she says, "I'm Peach." And I'm like, okay, you're Peach. And she goes, "Well, her mommy's Peach." And I said, okay, where are we going? She's like, "But her daddy's brown too." And I said, okay. And she said, "How can I be brown?" And I said, "You can't be." I said, "Why?" And her exact words were, "Brown is beautiful." And I think all of America and all of humanity at this point needs to go back to the eyes of a kindergarten before any influence and any outside influence, so they can see that we're all people, we're all beautiful, just like my daughter did back then. And she's still, they're still great, they're still great friends. Blair's my best friend. And that's just where I come from. It's there. The compassionate stories, they really are there. This horrific event, I mean, I don't know what the right answer is. To answer your question, do I think the system's broken? I don't think the system's broken. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's impossible to be perfect because, as a system, we all have to work together, and we can't, and we don't. So until we do that, our system's never going to work 100%, and it's going to be flawed. And I don't know the answer. It's above my pay grade, and I don't think I'll ever be able to figure it out. But I'll tell you this right now, at least the men and women I work with right now, there is no racial bias. There is nothing but people that care about other people and want to do the right thing and want to help people. And you can ask any one of my officers, why are you a police officer? And it's to help people. It's not to run and gun and to have fun and put on our lights. Yeah, it is fun. Listen, it's fun to put your lights on and go fast. But that's not why we're there. That's not why I'm there, and that's not why the people I work with are there. And if you believe me for any percentage of anything, believe it that there's a lot of good cops, just like there's a lot of good people out there that just want to help. That's why I'm here tonight. I teach mental health and stress management to police officers first, to identify and be able to properly help those people in the community without having to put them in your system when you were a corrections officer, because we all know that they don't belong there. We also, in our advanced class, we talk about autism and then our own stress and mental health. So that's why I'm here, because I want to take whatever I can and then maybe pick some of you people to kind of help us get the point across and get the information out there. Autism, unfortunately, when we teach it in our class, a lot of the officers, they don't see it past the child. They don't understand that, an autistic person grows up. And that's where a lot of issues in law enforcement that I see is because we kind of forget, a lot of the police officers, when they think of someone who's on a spectrum, they're a child, but they're not. We all get older, we all grow up, we all become adults. So we all need to figure out a better way in dealing with them as an adult. So I think this whole thing is amazing, except for that one little jerk that hopped on. And, I just felt like I had to chime in there for you because I didn't see anyone else doing it in the police.
Nah, I mean, we appreciate that. You kind of took one of my upcoming thoughts is me and Ben would definitely there for you. We can actually link up with you to help your officers with understanding autism more. So we'll talk about that in the future. We can exchange information, whatever we can do to help out the community and those individuals out there protecting our streets understand exactly what we are facing here as Ausome. I like to call them Ausome parents instead of autism parents. I like to use Ausome. A little bit more definitive, gives it a little bit more good feeling towards it. So definitely thank you for your input. Please, this is an open forum, so everybody is going to be inputting with different things. Do I have anybody else that would like to comment?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I'd like to kind of piggyback off of what the officer said. There's actually a study that was done at CHOP recently at the, I think it's the Roberts Center, it's Center for Autism Research, so CAR. They did a study for to help the Philadelphia police improve interactions with individuals on the autism spectrum. So one of the things that they did, I participated in the study myself. I went back there, I think it was like 2 or 3 times. And one of the things that we did, they did like a bunch of different stuff. Like did a lot of like avatars. They put like goggles on you and the person used an iPad. So what you did was like you put the goggles on and then you tried to, it would put you like in the world, like on the streets of Philadelphia. So obviously the person administering the test always warned us, like there's an officer about to approach you. So what I did was I looked around, and when the officers approached me in the study, they asked like, there's just the normal standard questions. I always made sure that not keep my hands in my pockets, because that's not one of the things that they tell you not to do when you are ever interacting with an officer. Always keep your hands out in the open. Do not try to put them in your pockets because they might try to think that you're grabbing a weapon or something. So one of the things that I've learned whenever I interact with a police officer is to just speak less and listen a lot, and to always act calm, because like they say, like when they read you your Miranda rights, like anything you say or do can and will be used against you in the court of law. And that includes before they read you your rights and after they slap the cuffs on you. So one of the things that I've learned in is that there is great that there is more people want to improve the relations with the autism community and law enforcement, and to be able to eliminate some of the common misperceptions that people have. Some people tend to associate autism with children, but like you said, a lot of individuals with autism will eventually grow up, and it's our hope that they never have to face or have any involvements with the criminal justice system.
And I piggyback.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, just to piggyback off of what Matt said, and in response to the officer, I do have a friend that is also a police officer. I don't know what district she works for, but she's in partnering with a nonprofit organization in Philly that is helping to train her department as far as autism and behaviors with autism, because it's such a broad spectrum of behaviors that you can't just say like, all right, this is what you need to look out for. Because like with my son, he has a speech disorder. So that's one of my biggest fears, is that he may not respond in time, or he's not paying attention to social cues. So, I passed that on to her because I said, there's a lot of behaviors that need to be brought to their attention during that training, because that could be misconstrued as they're being non-compliant, or he also has a trauma disorder. So if that situation triggers him, that could bring on other behaviors that the officer may not be aware of. So I've been, just passing my concerns on to her, since she had reached out to me as far as what she's doing with her department. I don't know what district she's in, but her name's Roz Talley, if anyone is familiar with her. But she does a lot of community outreach, and she does have a daughter that has autism as well. So, but that's just, as a parent, that's just my concern, because as he gets older, and I'm trying my best to really, get him to really just be aware of his environment, And like Matt said, hopefully he's never in that type of situation. But I think like my biggest concern as his mom is, how do I keep him safe, basically, and how, hopefully whatever that situation is that he just comes out safe. That's just really all I care about.
So what I can recommend to you is something that I do, as long as it's, I've gotten myself in trouble a couple times only because I've turned down the radio and not answered other calls when I've done this. But if a parent reaches out to our department, I think it's very good to be proactive and introduce your child to law enforcement so they're more comfortable when they see us, because the lights, the sirens, the uniform, the badge, the gun, everything. They're not going to be looking here. They're going to be looking everywhere else, and they're not going to be able to communicate well. So if I have time, the parents will reach out to our department. I'll usually, I'm not good at it, but I'll play basketball. So the kid beats me, so they think they're better than a cop to begin with. But, you know, we interact with the child, even if it's just playing Legos. I'll spend an hour with the kid and just kind of talk to them and interact just so they're comfortable. And then if it works out well, I'll bring my partner the next time. And then I'll make sure the other guys in the department know about it. They'll do drive-bys, they'll wave. So it's a little bit more of a common practice that we're interacting in a good situation. So God forbid, you know, like a thunderstorm. We had so many calls yesterday of people in a spectrum flipping out. I want to say that we were on priority radio traffic, which means there is no radio traffic. The dispatcher's calling you. You're not keying up on anything. You're looking at your computer in your car and you're hitting, you know, just the priority stuff in your area. Well, in my area, I didn't have it, but I heard at least 4 calls of someone on the spectrum freaking out because of the storm. So the officers had to go to intervene. I don't know if they called mobile crisis in to help them or whatnot, or if they were able to diffuse it. You know, because that was, I mean, listen, I was scared at that storm. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was very crazy.
And so,
no, I was more scared that I wasn't going to be able to participate in this panel tonight.
Hey, I got Jude, and Jude is actually going to be our guest next Tuesday. He's actually calling from Ireland. So right now it's about midnight or maybe close to 1 a.m. over there in Ireland. Hey, Jude, you said you got a question.
Yeah, it's not really a question. I just wanted to examine a couple of the points with everyone else, and it kind of has 2 strands. I know that we've talked about you know, the American community, or even with me, the Black community globally, and the autistic community. I am autistic myself. And I just wanted to go back to a point that the officer made in relation to understanding autism and autistic people. In that, through my whole life, I went through the school system as an autistic child, and then grew up, graduated, became a social worker, dad, and so on. But my whole life, I had got listening to so many non-autistic people telling autistic people like me what autism is not. So I would very much, because I've done training through my social work job and so on, and even since my speaking tours and stuff about doing autistic training. And there's very, very few people that have done autism training that has been delivered by an autistic person. For example, for me, as a question to the officer, I'm not a police officer. So what would you and your precinct feel about me as a non-police officer teaching police officers like you how to be respectful to the African American community, having no experience in any of it? You know, that is where the flaw in society is. There's too many people who are not qualified to discuss a certain topic, discussing certain topics with a self-proclaimed expertise. And that's where the problem lies. I know that another point was that, you know, there's a bad apple in every bunch, but we shouldn't accept that. We get rid of that apple. No, we can't just say, oh, there's a few bad apples, because accepting these bad apples is why we're here. It was the bad apple who put the knee on George Floyd's neck. I mean, we can't accept that anymore.
Wow. Hey, Jude, I gotta say, Jude, I could never be upset just hearing your accent. Like, it just makes me happy. Like, you could argue with me all night, and I'd be like, you're right.
Right.
If I can just chime in for just a moment, I mean, I can't speak as a law enforcement officer. I can only speak as a judge. But I know that I am truly blessed in many ways. I will go back to that in a moment. And that's any system is naturally flawed because it's comprised of people. People are flawed. Unfortunately, a lot of people are products of their environment, and that means products of racism, unfortunately. That doesn't mean we accept it. That means we educate. I am going back to my blessings. I have so many. One is that I grew up with a handicapped brother.
Wow.
And that has taught me very early on a lot of things, good and bad. I got into almost a few really nasty fist fights with people who would make fun of him. I had to learn at a young age why he was different and how to accept his differences. And I had to fight for him in many ways as far as getting a best education, to get fairness, to be in an environment that was safe for him, because he's in a group home at this time. But having that experience has helped me as a human being. And I agree with the officer. If you don't go into certain occupations because you want to help people, you shouldn't be in them. And that's the same for judges. If you are not in this because you want to help people in court, then you shouldn't be a judge. That's my belief. I'm very lucky because I have been to help me in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that sincerely, my dear. And that's because I teach civics on a volunteer basis in 7 schools, because I think people need to really, truly appreciate and understand the wonderful liberties that we have as Americans. And until you understand them, you can't truly cherish them. Part of the civics program deals with bullying and our First Amendment, but I have Ben come in to speak about autism, what it's like to be different, and to educate our children that bullying is not the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the fact that Ben volunteers at my court, and he is wonderful at it. If there's anybody who knows how to put a smile on anyone's face, it is Ben. No one wants to come to court ever, unless they're getting married, maybe, but it's not always a pleasant experience. And Ben helps out on days that are especially crowded with traffic cases. And he truly puts, as he says, he puts their, frown upside down.
To smiles. Frowns to smiles,
so true. A frown to smiles. There you go. But Ben is a living example of someone who goes around educating people. He educates them that, he doesn't have any boundaries. He is not in any way restrained from pursuing his dreams. And we need to educate in so many different ways. I'm lucky. I echo the police officer because I am a judge in Montgomery County, in Hatfield Township and Montgomery Township. I started a drug addiction program called DARA, where I get people into treatment rather than send them to jail. And I get it right from the bench. So I think I'm very fortunate because I have 2 police departments who help me with this. They go the extra mile to bring people to me, to make sure that I see them at the height of their issues and that, we proceed quickly when the iron's hot to help them.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see really great examples of genuine heroes and genuine people who really do care about what they're doing. So I do feel blessed in so many ways. I am happy to have gone through autism training as a judge. And I know a lot of police departments, as we were saying, do have that kind of training. We need to keep it up consistently. It shouldn't be once in a career training. It should be constant. And we should be having training from people with autism if they're going to teach autism and the cues, because you have to remember, police as well as judges see all sorts of people. We see people with mental health. We see people with addiction. We see people who are, quite frankly, violent, nasty, and some people who are so wholeheartedly good and have been vulnerable and are in the system, in very tragic ways. So, we have to understand, and I do suggest that if you are coming to court for any reason, as a witness, a victim, for a vehicle citation, whatever it may be, call ahead. let us know. For example, if you're going to be a victim or a witness in court, come and see the court, see what it's like, so it's not strange to you.
Or do like a social story, like take pictures and stuff, and then you can do like I wonder if we can create like social stories about like some different stuff, like this is a police car, this is what you do.
Anything you say, Ben, I'm on board, you know that. But I mean, honestly, I think you need to, just like the officer said, we need to expose people with different abilities to what they're going to experience. If it be court, if it be the police in the future, whoever it may be, and wherever it may be, we need to expose them so that it doesn't seem so strange and it doesn't seem so scary. I can't even imagine what it's like to have the sensory issues that autism brings and have to deal with, flashing lights and have to deal with going in and testifying on a witness stand. These are all scary things for people who are not on the spectrum. So how can we ever expect that it's going to be smooth and comfortable for people who are? So education is everything. We don't want anyone in the system to misunderstand, verbal and nonverbal cues, because we are, as part, I guess, of law enforcement, we are exposed to so many people with so many different personalities and behaviors that it really does help if we can understand that the person we're about to see or deal with does have autism.
I actually wanted to piggyback on Judge Duffy really quick. I actually made a phone call up to New York and my New York City police, and I told them about this panel just to let them know about it. And I told them what we're doing and stuff. I also called Minneapolis police and Atlanta and let them know as well. So
you're amazing.
So it's just really cool how we can tell people about this program that we're doing. And then I want to say another thing real quick too, and then we can go back to the and another thing too is when we going through TSA or security or somewhere, I like to wear a sticker that says, "Please be patient with me. I have autism." It helps the people understand. And then, an example, like with the cards, it helps the police officer understand. Like if you're going to a game or you're going to like a theme park, they understand better, and they're like, "Oh wow, I do understand now. And now he has autism. I can read the sticker."
So, but of course, you need the training with that too, so you know what the sticker really means and what behaviors that may seem out of place.
Yeah.
So education's everything.
Yeah.
So I'm Kathleen. I'm also a mom of a 12-year-old with autism and a couple other mental health disorders thrown in there. And we have had some contact with law enforcement. And I'm also a behavior analyst. So I help with behaviors in homes, schools, communities, all of that. And one of the things I did really want to highlight, especially right now, is something Chante had said about, the spectrum is very broad. And so some children we may recognize that they have autism and some we may not. So it really is something that I wish that we could train everybody on all of the time. And so everybody had this competency, and I know we can't. So one of the things that I do for a lot of the families that I work with is we make these little laminated picture cards if they're not able to verbally communicate. And if they're on vacation or if they're out in the community, they have them with them and their parents have them with them. And it's sort of an easy way to sort of say, hey, I need you to know this ahead of time. And it's helpful in terms of being preventative and sharing that information. And then something else that I wanted to highlight that is relevant to today. So I've been working with families for 20 years and across all different cultures, from North Philadelphia to Bucks County and Morrisville, all the way up to Central Bucks and back again. And so that's given me the ability to see lots of different people from different backgrounds. And the thing that's come through from former clients and families in these last few weeks, and they've reached out over and over, is that it is different. And when I told them about the panel tonight, the thing that they wanted me to see was their fears are real and their fears are different. And so while I really respect how you're raising your daughter, officer, and I wish we could all be there, I know we're not. And so my I think my real goal is that since we aren't, you know, what do we do now? And how do we help our kids now on the spectrum? I do know I've had moms who are African American call me in the last few days sobbing, saying, what do I do now? It's scarier, it's worse, it's really loud, it's really big. And, you know, I know for me, I had to say this to them. I had to own it and say, listen, I'm here for you, I'm listening to you, and I'm doing things like this panel. But I honestly don't know how that feels. I had to own that, because when my son has a public meltdown, I don't think, oh my goodness, what if? I don't have the same worry. And so that's real right now, and that's happening right now. And so the biggest piece of me that wanted to look at this part of the panel was to say, you know, how are we addressing that layer too? Because this is our most vulnerable people. And obviously as a mother, I'm super protective, but also as a clinician for all these families, all of their children, I'm super protective of. I'm in their homes, I know them. They're part of my extended work family. And so that is something that also doesn't always get translated. And I'm happy to work with law enforcement and judges on this layer as well, both as a behavior analyst and as a mother. But that is something that has been pressing and weighing on all of my families that I work with who identify as African American or Latin, anything that's not white right now. This is something that we are trying so hard to try to build bridges for. And so, you know, I thank, you know, everybody who's here doing this, but I want it to be something that grows into something valuable, something real, but something that we can create tangible change from.
Kathleen, can I piggyback on what you were saying, like as far as with the African American mothers, that I'm gonna be just completely honest, and everyone that's watching, like this, like I've had at least 3 PTSD episodes, and I have PTSD, so I do have therapy support for that. But on top of that, my son does have a trauma disorder from an incident that happened 2 years ago, which I'm not gonna get into that, but yeah, it has been a struggle. Like last week was terrible, and I'm just keeping it real. It was completely terrible mentally for me. And the fact that I have to keep it all together for him, because if he senses me losing it, then it triggers him. And I really just had to keep it real with my white friends. Like, listen, this is something you probably will never have to wake up and think about. Like, I'm looking at the future. Like, my son is already big for his age. I'm looking at when he'll be 17, when he'll be 27, when he'll be 30. And I wish I can live forever to protect him, but I know I won't. And I can't keep him in a bubble, because that does him no justice on how to survive in this world. But that is a legit fear. I can't sugarcoat it. It is a legit fear. And that's why I wanted to do this panel, because we need to have this conversation about building that relationship between not just with the African American community with law enforcement, but also with the brown and black community that has autism with the law enforcement. Because if you're not understanding what autism is, it's going to end badly no matter what. Like, because we're not always going to get that person who has good intentions in their heart when they're doing their job. And that's just everybody across the board. Everyone in every, profession doesn't have the good intentions. I've been in the medical field since I was 19, and I've seen a lot of people who's supposed to be taking care of patients that don't have the best interest at heart. So I totally agree with the officer was saying. You have a lot of people who are in whatever job that they're in, and they just don't have the good intentions. But I'm just saying, as a mom who has a black child, it's just a worry that I just don't want to have it for the rest of my life. And I don't want to trigger him, but also I want to have a healthy conversation with him as well, to be aware of the world that we live in. And, you know, the way that I'm raising him is the same way my parents raised me. They would tell me stories of how they grew up, but they never passed on that hate of, my dad is in his 70s, my mom is in her 60s. So they definitely went through some stuff early on of how Philly was back in those days, but never once, passed on, like, what they experienced, to be like, okay, I want you to think and feel this way about white people. I've lived in a predominantly Black neighborhood and still had white friends. I've lived in a predominantly white neighborhood and still had Black friends, because I always looked at people for who they are. I see their differences, but I celebrate that. That's where the problem is that you got to see the differences, celebrate that. So that's just where I'm at with it. Like, it's got to be celebration of neural diversity as well as cultural diversity as well. So.
I agree. I don't have an answer. I mean,
I wanted to say that what you had to
hold on for a minute, Matt.
Okay.
I think part of what the whole world needs to do is what you guys are doing tonight. We all need to come together. We need to come together as one voice, and figure out the right way. You know, the biggest part of our class is helping the police officer maybe relearn what we should all have been born with, and that's empathy. My biggest thing is when I leave my house to go to work, I treat every single individual that I encounter every darn night with the same respect I want my mother, my child, my spouse, any of my family and friends treat it with. And if I can't do that, then I need to send my butt home. And Jude, I know you said that, you know, you didn't like my bad apple comment. And I'm not mad because of your accent. I still can't get that. But what do we do with bad apples? We throw them the hell away. It's just we have to find them. We have to find them before we bite into them. And unfortunately, this one surfaced before we had an opportunity to bite into it. And you know, there's checks and balances. There's bad people out there. There is evil out there. But I mean, all I can say is what you guys are doing is what the whole world needs to do, instead of you know, everyone's allowed to get angry. I shouldn't say, you know, I'm not going to say don't get angry, but be doing stuff like this as a panel and sitting down with everybody from every different angle. I wish we all could do it. So I applaud you guys for doing just this. It's a hope that you know, there's definitely hope out there.
Oh, there is.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and
Definitely agree.
With as far as bad apples go, and look, I'm not naive either. I know that, you know, there are bad apples, and we'll not eradicate every single one, but if we can get rid of some, it's a step in the right direction for sure. And I mean, the issues with racism and a lack of acceptance of neurodiversity just isn't something that's cropped up in 2020. I mean, this has been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that like every other species in the animal kingdom, the vast majority will always marginalize a minority that the majority perceives as different from them. And it's hard for that to change. It's just human nature, and a very sad part of it.
No, I agree with you. You know, and one of our biggest
what I wanted to say, I'm sorry for talking over you.
Oops.
What I wanted to add to the conversation was, I think that the last couple of people that spoke all brought very good ideas to the table. And another thing is, I am a peer specialist. I work with the Community Autism Peer Specialist, or CAPS, a program in Philadelphia. What they do is I work one-on-one with individuals on the autism spectrum throughout the city of 14 to 34. And one thing that I have found in common with all of them is that they're all affected by this issue of what happened in Minneapolis one way or the other. And another thing that I found is that even for people I know that do not have autism, is that they found that, like, they are experiencing moments of sensory overload. Like, for example, when I was talking to one of my participants' mothers, and she woke up and there was a lot of sirens, and she woke up and walked outside, and there was smoke like everywhere, because she resides in Albany, and they were setting a lot of fires all up along Broad Street. And it just made her very, very, very sad that she woke up and she felt as though, like, the message of the people felt the need that they had to take vigilante justice and take justice into her own hands. So it made me sad knowing that since the pandemic started, I've been back home in my child home, staying with my parents. It made me sad knowing that I'm not that far away from my apartment in Philadelphia right now, and I couldn't be with my guys to support them in all this. If I could have, I would have gotten in the car and drove right back to Philly, knocked on the door and said, hey, let's sit down and talk. But in light of everything that's happening, I have to remember that I have to remember my safety as well. And another thing with neurodiversity that people don't take into account is that neurodiversity, in a combination of coming from different like walks of life, like race, or it's also a difference of opinion. So I think what's been good about everything that's going on recently is that people are able to see minor differences, but I think that people are starting to rationalize a little more and are starting to look at the whole picture. And that I think everybody agrees that with the criminal justice system, that almost every police department has a few bad apples, but the problem is that the way the system is that they're not always able to succeed in detecting the bad apples and getting rid of them before people bite into them. So what I wanted to do is like just listen to the last couple of people that spoke before I did, and just kind of sum up what they all said, all the good points. And that way, I think that this panel was actually planned like a long time before the unfortunate events that happened last week in Minneapolis. And I think that it's great that we were able to bring in people that have many, even if they're not on the spectrum, but also like individual experiences of people of interacting with them on the spectrum. So I think that is very, very great.
I want to just get in the middle. We're definitely just building some steam here, and the mission with everybody that's on here tonight is to basically listen and change, and that's what I think the world actually needs at this current time. Unfortunately, we've been unpacking this stuff for an hour, so I'm just going to speed up with no disrespect to anybody's opinions, but I want to respect everybody's time. I have one question, and then we're going to open up for anybody else who may be here as a participant to show questions. And this is my question that I have, and I was thinking about my own son, Shane, who is 12 and on the spectrum when I wrote this. And it's basically with the media targeting what to show on television in the midst of the George Floyd protests, even going back to the early civil rights movement. Are we as minorities with children on the spectrum dealing more with race or equality? And in that, what are the things that we want police to know when interacting with our children and adults on the spectrum, as well as their parents? So that's a question for anybody to actually answer, whatever you feel, especially my parents on here of awesome children. Aaron, also you too, Jude. You can also chime in on that too. But what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with the race part or the equality part? Because it seems like with me, now, and it's been like this, but the equality kind of took lead, and now it's like the race is taking the lead. So it's an uneven keen on both of the issues. So what are we doing here? What are we facing here as far as the the minority children and what we're dealing with?
Can I say something? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Does someone else want to talk?
Go ahead, you got it.
Okay. Just to piggyback what you were saying, Jamiel, it is like right now it's like a balance right now. And I agree, like at first it was more like I was more pushing for like we need to be more aware and accepting of autism. But with this uptick of what's going on with a lot of brown and black people dying, it's really like it's like a balancing act right now. I mean, this is just me as a parent, how I feel. Like, it's really just like a balancing act, because it's like, I very much want to be even more involved in the community, even more so with law enforcement, to have them understand, especially with my son, because he's very unique as far as all children on the spectrum are unique in their own way and amazing in their own way. But especially with my son, like, loud noises don't bother him, sirens don't bother him. His issue is really communication, and that is the baseline of what can go right and what can go wrong in a blink of an eye, because he doesn't know how to respond. And on top of that, he has, a speech disorder called echolalia. So anything you say to him, he's going to just repeat it back. So it's kind of like, it's just going to be like, which we're really working on, just so that for safety reasons, if he ever gets lost or whatever, that someone can, he can say what his name is, where he lives at, what his phone number is. So, I am working with him on that, so that going forward as a safety issue, someone can help him if I'm not there, if his dad's not there. Yeah. But absolutely, that is definitely both of those that I'm really, it's got to be focused on both.
Absolutely.
Aaron, I want to hear from you, because you work with those individuals on the spectrum. But you don't have anyone in your family that's on the spectrum. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So I've worked with clients that had children on the spectrum. I've worked with clients, on the spectrum, so forth and so on. So I think at the bottom line, it has to start with race, because that's how people, not saying that everybody's, is racist, but the people that are racist, they obviously learned it from somewhere, whether it's at the home or growing up, wherever that was, babe. And then from the race, it goes to equality, because if you already feel a certain way towards a certain person, or you have a certain thoughts about them, you're going to treat them different regardless anyway. It's just the way people are, unfortunately. I think it definitely, it starts with the younger kids, educational wise, as a lot of you were saying, to piggyback off of that. I've also done, I'm on the board, several boards for nonprofits. One of them is called Father's Lead. And we go out to a detention center, and I've actually seen, I've been in the room with these kids, in there, and not all of them are bad kids. You know what I mean? Some of them are in there because of their situation, because of their environment, who they were around, and the circumstance that they got themselves into. And even having this discussion with these kids, giving them a chance to, speak out, give them a platform. You got the staff in the back, like, loud, disturbing our conversation. You know what I mean? So, a couple of kids, they took heed of that, and then they start acting up, and then next thing you know, you got to see the correctional officers going back, and then they pulling kids out of the room, and it's just chaos for no reason, just because you didn't give these kids an opportunity to speak. You know what I mean? And it definitely starts. I think it would be a good idea to have the schools, like different type of schools, come and just have a day where they can just, have fun with teachers, can interact, students can interact, and just do something instructive where they all can just see different people and experience it. Because me, myself, I grew up in Chester, but I moved out media to Wallingford, Swarthmore. So I went from a predominantly Black school to a predominantly Caucasian school, which was two different worlds. And it's just crazy to see the difference of the variety of that experience. And I just think it all starts with the kids and what they grow up seeing. And there's no way we're gonna just dissolve racism and dissolve these problems without starting with the kids first. I mean, I think these panels that we're doing now are phenomenal. And if these things like these would continue, we have our judge on, we got our officers on, people in the community. You guys are educators. Like, these panels, I think, are essential. And if it was a way, even when we could record these panels and maybe put them in, the high schools or middle schools or something like that. But I think the thing is consistency. We just gotta keep it going and keep educating and keep teaching each other different things.
Well, that's why Ben is such a wonderful ambassador for teaching children who are different, definitely. What different means.
Hey, Jamiel, this is Glenn. Can I jump in real quick with this question?
Hey,
how you doing? The one thing I see with autism, it crosses all the boundaries, right? It doesn't matter whether you're black or white, female or male, rich or poor. It does not matter. I'm seeing autism, and it's brought, because of Ben and being part of our family, I see autism across the whole gamut of things. And I work for a company that they've, taken this to the next step and have incorporated autism into their programs. And I've learned so much from folks that are on the spectrum, and also being able to communicate with other people within our company because of that. So these silos that we have, and we'll say, you could say black and white silos or rich and poor. I don't care what silos you're talking about. They come down real quickly when all of a sudden we're talking about autism and how we can help these folks, right? It doesn't matter to me whether you're black or white, rich or poor, male or female. We're here to try to help and bridge that gap. And I've seen and actually have made friends with people that I would have never made friends with if it hadn't been for Ben having autism.
I just wanted to give a couple of points, because if I'm right, am I the only person here who isn't American or who doesn't live in America? Because this is kind of a bit of a neutral point, and it's something that completely baffles me. So I'll start with the race part. Is that I just saw in the news, and that it's only now in the year 2020 where American towns and cities are now pulling down statues of Confederate generals. I mean, these are people that wanted to enslave black people in cotton plantations in the 1850s, and their statues, I mean, your General Leahy's and your Stonewall Jackson statues are still there. I mean, how can that possibly be? That's one thing, and I mean, it's all subliminal. Like, if you're walking hand in hand and going for an ice cream with your child, oh, hello, son, that guy who is on that horse and that bronze statue wanted to enslave black people, but there's a statue right there, glorified for everyone to see. So I think that's, maybe a bigger problem from a more neutral person looking in. But from the autistic
here,
is that no? And I mean, and Ben, I'm sure you will agree with this. I mean, I've done speaking engagements all over the world, and whenever I say I'm autistic, people kind of look at me funny, because they think, it's only for little people. And what I've found generally, because I've done a lot of work with American organizations as well, is that people use the word autism for solely learning disabilities. I know that autistic people can have learning disabilities as well, but the likes of myself or anyone else who is autistic without a learning disability, it's nearly like you have a lesser status, or you're not in need of as much support. Yes, I do have a house and a car and books and tours and blah, 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 and everything else, and a son and a girlfriend, but I mean, I would still have my challenges, but that's seemingly kind of brushed aside for the stereotypical autistic view that we are all like Rain Man, which isn't necessarily true. So
I wanted to piggyback on what you said about Rain Man. I think one of those movies just reminds me of like Forrest Gump, for example, Rain Man. There is different people and like different disabilities. So it just reminds me that we are all unique and special, just like a rainbow. People are different. And I love how you said that about and I wanted to piggyback on the police officer and you when you said about the bad apple. Well, sometimes people on the spectrum are special, and we just need to be kind to each other, and that's what Ellen DeGeneres always says.
You know what? So before anything, all right. So I want to give people a chance to actually speak, because we're running into like 2 hours, which is great. We need a lifetime to unpack what's going on here in society currently right now. We need an entire lifetime, but we can shorten that just by listening, and that goes into forums like we're having today, and linking what we feel passionate about, which is those individuals who are on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, and law enforcement. And now we're talking about equality and race. But let me ask something to Ben. Ben, what do you want to say just to everybody here and those individuals in the country that is listening, from your heart, from a man that's on the spectrum? What do you want to say about racism, what it means to you?
It actually just means, and you know, I was going to end this with the show. I was going to end this at the end, but we talked about the other day, Mr. Rogers. Like, if everybody was just like Mr. Rogers, if Mr. Rogers was still around, our world would be a better place today.
I agree. Definitely.
It's his lessons that live on.
Exactly.
Exactly. Still very much live on.
Exactly.
There we go.
So all of the content that's in his shows are still relevant today.
Yeah.
How
it's wonderful.
They are.
Or kind of like reading Rainbow, what you said before.
Exactly.
So kid, I said hi.
I want to open up for questions from anybody that's participating with us today. For any one of the panelists, our assistant Kaylee, thank you again for everything that you do. You guys can unmute your mics.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, we just ask for you to be respectful of everyone. Just give, an individual a time to ask questions and to respond to them. But just be respectful of everybody. We're just here to listen. And as my pastor told us in our last internet gathering, is that we need more listening. Mm-hmm. We're not doing enough listening. Mm-hmm. And I think America needs that, because when they listen, they start to unpack and understand why people are feeling the way they are actually feeling. So the floor is open. Let's start some good conversation for a couple of minutes, and so we can get everybody back to their respective evenings of what they need to do. So who's first?
Yeah. Go ahead, Will. Will, do you want to go?
I think you may have been answering someone in the room.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to piggyback on what Matthew said, because the study at CHOP has really helped me to understand the police. And the first part was virtual reality, and actually the next part was a real life police officer. So they went in the room while I was waiting, and they asked me a couple questions, that there was a bag in the room, and they're like, "Did you happen to notice this bag here?" And I was like, "No." And just really interesting stuff about the police and everything. And I also wanted to add that people, they really shouldn't be scared of the police at all. They should, be able to tell a law enforcement officer, what they feel about the situations. They should, just not be scared, because I don't want to be scared of police, and I don't want anyone else to be scared of the police either. They should, just have the courage to talk to the police, for anything, anything at all. So.
And if I may respond to that, I actually can relate. And my mother and I'm in Los Angeles. We've trained Los Angeles Police Department officers for over 20 years, starting with me telling my own story and putting a face to autism and telling officers about what it's like to have autism and how they can help. We've also discovered that train the police is not enough anymore. We can't just expect officers to be experts on everything, because an officer actually said to us, "I could know someone has autism, but if they run, I still have to chase them. And if they fight with me, I have to fight back and win." Who is teaching the young people to not run and not fight? And the answer was nobody. So my mother and I worked with Joey Travolta, John Travolta's brother, to make an entire movie. I'm putting it in the chat here. Be Safe, the movie. which teaches people with and without autism how to interact safely with the police. This is what's missing in so many people's education and life as a whole, because we need both parties, police and people with autism and the community too, to understand one another, know what's expected of the other, rather than going into a system blind or a situation blind and not knowing what's happening until it's too late.
Is that movie available for
It
people
is.
to
You go to
watch?
besafethemovie.com. It's a DVD and you can order it there. It's available in Spanish.
Can you say that name again for everyone?
Yes, certainly. It's Be Safe the Movie. Be Safe the Movie. It's a video modeling curriculum, so it will show people through videos how to interact with the police, how to ask for help, how to get arrested safely, how to disclose your diagnosis. This isn't being taught in a classroom, and we're leaving safety to chance as we let our kids out into the wild. So we need to fill that missing link and bridge that gap. And my mother and I take things a step further by going to communities before COVID-19 hit and bring the police and the young people and their caregivers together to make that introduction in a safe environment.
Before it happens, right? Before they have to move.
I heard earlier about being proactive. This is proactive. It's
Wonderful.
the number one habit of highly effective people, according to Stephen Covey, being proactive. And we can make that introduction, set the expectations, and have role playing. And the police will say, "This is my badge. This is my gun. You can look, but don't touch." The kids will remember that, or they take a promise: "I will not reach into my pocket or into my bag or touch stuff." They make the promise, and it sticks with them.
That's great.
So, and I also want to say, Jude, I have Irish heritage, so I can relate to you on that level. And my mother has a saying: "Don't throw away the apple because of one little bad spot." We've been talking about apples tonight. My mother says, "Don't throw away the whole apple because of one little bad spot." So I think the bad spot on our apple of a society is starting to be more prevalent, but we need to eat around that, still live our lives while also addressing that bad spot.
And
I wanted to piggyback what you said, Tom.
Ahead,
Sorry, Ben.
Go ahead,
Ben.
Go ahead.
I was gonna piggyback what Tom said, because it should be taught in classrooms, and people need to learn about the police and what to do. Some people with autism, they might resist and not even know it. But yeah, I wanted to piggyback what he said. It should be taught to many people. So go ahead, Ben.
I was gonna say I loved what Tom said, and I just think it's actually really, really cool that we need more trainings on these. And I was thinking through the whole entire night, I thought we were gonna have extreme conversations and people were gonna just get upset and stuff. But no, I thought we handled it really well. Everybody did a great job tonight. I just want to give a special shout out to everybody who was on the panel. But listen, I think we should do these, and I want to say, Jamiel, do you think we should do these once a month? Because I think this is a great conversation, and I think we need to continue the conversation to this.
Well, we are actually going to have a part 2. So everybody who's actually tuning in and our panelists here, we are planning to have a part 2 of this actual panel, this topic, because like I said, it takes a lifetime to actually unpack the damage that has been set well before us here in society. And it has to just be a willingness in order to go through those layers in order to make things work. And that's what we're doing. We're doing, critical thinking, but we're also listening at the same time. And that's going to be the deciding factor on us actually being the change instead of just only requesting. So with go ahead, Aaron, was you about to say something?
No, my daughter came in. No, I'm good.
Okay, so what I have to say, unfortunately, we have to go. We do have to go. Our sister Kaylee is having some technical difficulties, so we're just trying to make sure nobody gets shut off. So we're going to actually end it here. So I would like to thank all of our panelists and audience members for taking time out to start the process of change.
Thank you, guys.
With the factor of listening. I would like to extend an invitation for everyone here and at home to join us for our part 2. For this discussion,
That would be July 9th.
More details will actually be coming. And we would like to extend the invitation, the Ben and Jay Show, to help anybody that's in law enforcement, our individuals that's on here. Well, Ben, you have a very good relationship with the Honorable Duffy. So anything that I can do to help you and Ben out, Your Honor, will be my privilege. And Ben, what do you have to say to everybody before we leave out of here?
Having autism is not a bad thing, and it doesn't characterize who we are. Everyone is unique and special, just like a rainbow.
That's a great point, Ben.
Absolutely.
That is a great point. I want to say basically...
Thank you. Well, go ahead. I was going to say thank you to Access Services. Thank you to Kaylee.
Oh, yeah.
I want to thank
Definitely.
Jamiel Owens. Everybody did an amazing job tonight. We were all serious at times. I want to thank Judge Duffy for coming on tonight. Thank you for taking your time out of...
My pleasure.
Out of your...
I just basically want to say before we get off of here is that, you know, it saddens me as an African-American male that we have been building the pressure cooker of this topic for so many years now. And it seemed like at one point we were getting somewhere and then it got brushed under the rug. And then it seemed like something else happened and we had to speak out and we're getting somewhere and brushed under the rug. Basically where I'm going at is too many times you brush stuff under the rug, eventually somebody is going to trip. And unfortunately, today, everybody tripped. Even those who may not feel what those of color is actually feeling, we did trip. We failed as a society because we are supposed to be the ones, the forefront of this world, who's supposed to show that we love each other. We form with each other. And it shouldn't only be through tragedy. It just should be through everyday life. But it gives us time to actually start listening, start talking, start showing what the experiences that we actually come from. And I'm speaking about individuals in the urban communities, the poorest communities. I had one of my friends who actually have to be a new friend of mine asked me a question. How am I supposed to tell my daughter that they don't matter? And the answer is you're not supposed to tell them that they don't matter. What we're doing right now is we're saying that an individual group is tired of not being heard. Please listen. We need you to listen. This is very important to us. So I encourage everybody to just listen. Have your ears open, have your heart open, and we can change this. We can do this together. I have no doubt in my mind. You know why? Because God said it. We're all created in his image. So I just want to end with that note. I love you guys. Thank you for joining us tonight. Just be on the alert for part 2 as we come in and we talk about autism, police interactions, and unfortunately racism today in our awesome children. So that is it for us tonight. Everybody have a great evening. We love you guys. Peace. Ben and Jay Show.
Hey guys.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys. Take care.